Welcome to the In-Between-Man podcast, where men can be men. You know what's so great about starting a podcast? Like getting it out there, doing all the thumbnails and doing all that stuff. Like, the best part about doing that is nobody listens to anything that you post or anything that you put out there. You have this preconceived notion that you think your shit is just going to explode, and it just doesn't. And nothing's going to go viral, and it's going to require hard work. And, I'm prepared to do all that. But, I was hoping for a lottery win, but that's just not going to be the case. But today, we're going to be talking about the State of American Men 2025 research study. And the headline that we're going to be going over is as follows: armed and ready is the current state of being for many men, meaning they own firearms and support the views of militias. All right, let's table that for just 1 second. I'd like to welcome all the new people. If this is the first time you're listening to the In-Between-Man podcast, I'm glad that you're here. I've created, just for your sake, so that you can learn more about me, a introductory overview of what the In-Between-Man podcast is. And it talks about the who, which is going to be a little bit more background information on me, the what are we trying to accomplish, answering the question of why men are struggling today, the where, and the how. And they're not that long. I mean, I'm sure you could listen to one or two of them and determine whether or not if this podcast content is correct for you or ideal for you, and then make a decision. I don't want to waste anybody's time, and I'm clearly not with my 0 downloads. But I thought I'd just be transparent about it. I thought I'd just be transparent about it. And this headline, there's one more, and I don't even know if I'm going to do it because I don't know how relevant it is. But like, what we're doing with the State of American Men 2025 study is we are taking headlines from this study that was conducted, and I am trying to bring to light some of the dynamics that are mentioned in this study. Well, why would you want to do that, Rennick? What would ever cause you to do that? And the reality is that I'm doing it because I'm hoping that men will be able to identify with some of the things that, if not all of the things, some of the things, or worst case, one of the things that this study points out. Talks about the manosphere, being in the man box, economic anxiety, and how men have all their value wrapped up in how their ability to provide financially to their family and what that means, and not willing to ask for help and knowing that they need help, and all these things that are such a rampant part of our society today. And, there was another study done by the same outfit, Equimundo, that did a State of American Men 2023 study. And, it helped me understand and gave me kind of a framework of some of the things that I never really knew might or could even happen to me, right? And it just gave me a much better sense of how I was feeling at that time, or recognizing and identifying with something that the research brought up that made me feel like, okay, I get that. And maybe I do feel that way. And then what does that mean? Right? Like, I don't see an enormous sense of urgency to help men solve this problem. It's much easier to talk about it. It's much easier to say, these are all the things that are going on with men that could be happening to you. And, bring out data that is relevant and confirming that all those things are happening in the marketplace for men at home and even at work. And I am going to provide a service solution process overview that will help an individual man work through dynamics that they may not have considered. And look, it's not going to be fucking easy. The point is that this is not like an easy get out of jail free card. You know what I mean? This is not about winning the lottery. This is about actual work that a lot of men are just hoping they don't have to go through. Right? Maybe not everybody, but I just don't see the majority of men being all that excited about wanting to learn more about stuff that just hurts, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't do that, this is what could happen. So listen to this quote, and then I'll get into armed and ready. All right? So this is a quote from this study, and it says this: without deliberate intervention to redefine masculine success beyond the economic provision and to challenge the man box emotional restrictions, we risk losing an entire generation of men to depression, anxiety, and despair. You might be asking yourself, well, how many people are in a generation? Well, I'm glad you did ask that question because I have the answer for you. It ranges anywhere between 50 to 70 million people. And if you just take the lesser of the two evils and say 50 million, that means 25 million men are at risk of depression, anxiety, and despair. And if this is you, and you can identify with just those three words, depression, anxiety, and despair, then that's good enough. That's good enough. Because not doing anything doesn't solve the problem. Talking about the problem more doesn't solve the problem. You know, coming up with tips and techniques on how to solve random problems or whatever is not going to solve the problem. The problem is bigger than us. And I happen to believe that the problem stems from one core component and many other ones that has to do with our quote unquote traditional male value system. Buddy, I'm doing a podcast. Is he outside? Here, I open the door in here. Come in here. I open the door in here. Come here. Hey. Sorry, these are just some of the things you're going to have to handle with having an Australian cattle dog who is incredibly ambitious. But there is a value that has been casted upon men for centuries, and that value is called being emotionally stoic. And why I'm calling that one out is because, and I even said this in the last two episodes, and I'm going to say it again because it's worth repeating. If you grew up in the generation that I grew up in, or before or even after, my parents and my dad and my grandparents were, don't you talk about your feelings. If I lost a basketball game when I was 10 years old and I started crying because I really worked hard and wanted to win, I would be told to stop crying. I'd be told not to show any weakness. I would told to be, pull your bootstraps up and let's, stop your fucking whining is what I got told. And then that was the narrative. The door's open. That was the narrative that I had my entire life. So instead of talking about my feelings from that day forward, I just stuffed it all. And stuffing is the default solution for men when it comes to dealing with any emotions. Now, on the flip side of that coin, we live in a world now today that also says to men, don't ask for help. Because if you ask for help, you're just an absolute complete pussy, right? So I've also coined this term no man's land. A lot of men are living in no man's land where they don't want to share their feelings. They know that they shouldn't share their feelings, and they don't want to ask for help. And so we're stuck. We're stuck in this quagmire of just insanity that keeps going back and forth. Should I say something? Shouldn't I say something? And nothing ever gets done. And it's not until the garbage that we've stuffed for so long reaches a boiling point until we become so ready to make a decision to get rid of this pain that we either do or we don't. And the don't is usually something that has to do with hurting ourselves. And I hate that. And I never want that to be an option. All right, but let's talk about a little bit of armed and ready, okay? So giving you some more data that hopefully you can identify with. A surprisingly high number of men, 37%, and women, 33%, agree with the goals of a militia. And 6% of men and 4% of women report being a part of a militia. Militia members by gender. 6% of men in the survey are part of a militia. 4% of women are in a militia. You know, when I think of a militia, I think of prepared to defend, right? That's what I think. Prepared to defend at all costs. And armed and ready is not a joke. Firearm ownership. By the way, I am a firearm owner. I grew up shooting guns with my father at the age of 8 years old. Pistols, rifles, shotgun sports, sporting clays, trap and skeet, the whole 9 yards. I grew up doing that until my father passed away, and I haven't done it since. So I am for responsible gun ownership. And because I could see how it helped me with my self-esteem at a young age. So I'll just leave it at that. So firearms ownership is high across men and women. 27% of men own firearms. 23% of women own firearms. An election made you think of getting a firearm. 36% of men agreed with that statement, and 32% of women agreed with that statement. Of those who own firearms, 30% and 19% of women own AR-15s. I do not own an AR-15. I have an over and under Remington 3200 full choke shotgun I use for skeet shooting, and I got a Glock 17. That's it. Okay? Who is the most likely to own a firearm? Men and women who endorse online harmful narratives are 1.6 times as likely to own a firearm. Okay? There's a whole topic in this study that goes over online narratives and the manosphere. There's even been movies done recently about this. Men and women who voted for Kamala Harris in 2024 were 50% less likely to own a firearm. Okay? 15% of all men we sampled were both in the man box and own a firearm, suggesting they endorse using violence to achieve their goals. 15%. Wow. Okay. Firearm owners have lower levels of trust in public institutions. Hold on one second. What? Oh, I see what you're doing. Sorry, he's just lying outside. 26% owning a firearm is linked to lower rates of trust in 26% of men and women have a lower trust in Congress and the legal system. 25% lower trust in local government, 24% lower trust in police, 32% lower trust in news media. That is a very concerning stat. Why? Because it becomes more of an option if it isn't suggesting this. But it is. And I don't need to tell you that we have less trust in our government. I don't need to tell you that I'm sure a lot of people have less trust in the local police department. I know I will never know what it's like to be pulled over by a police officer. Being a black man, I'll just never know what that's like, and I can't even imagine. Same for Hispanics as well. Like, it's scary times, man. And that's it. This is another quick one, right? Like, just getting right to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter being that we, okay, or the people who responded to this survey are armed and ready. Is the current state of being for many men, meaning they own firearms and support views of militias. I mean, how many times have you gone online and seen, there's hundreds upon thousands of prepper channels. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I mean, I don't think it's wrong not to be prepared, right? But like, I'm prepared enough to, not be that concerned. Like, I don't have a bunker in, the woods somewhere with solar power and an AC unit. I just don't have that. And, I don't want that either. So, the purpose for putting this all together for you guys is it gives you a jumping off spot to identify. And if you can identify with this stuff, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. That doesn't mean that you're not thinking correctly. That doesn't mean that, you can't still consider doing that. I just want people to really understand why they may be doing that. I think so many people, men in particular, jump on these bandwagons of misogyny and, you know what I'm talking about, right? That they don't have really any idea what they're getting into. And because they're feeling like they have a sense of value for promoting a cause that they may not fully understand or even fully understand and fully believe that they're capable of following through with that work. I'm not knocking that either. I'm just concerned, right? Like, I'm just worried. I'm worried for all of us. And I don't know how to fix it. And I'm not saying that it's fixable. But what I'm saying is that you are the only person that is capable of making a positive change if you're depressed or in despair or have a lot of anxiety. You're the only person that can make that change. You and you alone. And if you don't see it or even think that it's there, then you'll never know that it needs to be changed or that there's another way of looking at it, right? We've gotten into this groove of having to be right that we don't consider anything else because we're so convicted on being right that we would never suggest that we were ever wrong. And I'm not saying that you have to do a full 360 or even a 180. But God, please look at the data. Do you identify with it? Why are men struggling today? Are you struggling today? What are you struggling with? Do you have economic anxiety? Have you confirmed that you're living in the man box, right? How about online communities in the manosphere? Narratives that are promoting, just causes. Like, okay, but have you thought it all through? Have you? I don't know. But I know what it feels like to be in enough agonizing mental pain that I had to seek help. And I was too much of a coward to hurt myself. And I didn't, obviously. So I did a lot of work. The work that I'm talking about is voluntary for you. And it usually depends on how much discomfort are you willing to take before you make a real decision. And you don't have to get to that point to make a decision. I am going to spend, after I get done with this, some time writing out more of what I'm hoping to offer to the public, to people who have a genuine desire to try to get better emotionally and things of that nature. Again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an MD. I'm not a doctor. I'm an average fucking Joe, okay, who walked in to a 12-step recovery program mentally broken and destroyed. I had no friends. I had no family. I had no money. I was alone by myself, where my disease loves for me to be in, loves to be isolated, loves that I don't ask for help. It loves that stuff. And the catalyst is, the driving force is, are you in enough discomfort to consider not only what I'm offering, but what anyone's offering? Options. I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I'm just going to say this in closing. Thank you so much for giving me the 23 minutes that you've given me. I appreciate it. Do me a favor, do yourself a favor. I am a huge New York Giants fan. I am drinking a delicious cup of brewed hot coffee with a splash of hazelnut creamer. It's not Coffee Mate creamer, because that's a little bit more expensive. It's more like the Walmart brand, which is made by the same company, just a little bit less expensive. And so if you feel like you need a coffee, just go out and get yourself one. Make it any way you want. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But get yourself one. And yeah, that's it. You know what? I'll see you in there.